Call me a sides queen, but I think that holiday side dishes are the absolute best part of any festive feast. So today I am making scalloped tomatoes for my holiday dinner. Happy holidays, everyone. I am Scott, and yes, I am a sides queen. And today this sides queen is making the side scalloped tomatoes, not scalloped potatoes. This recipe is super simple, it's versatile, and it is so yummy. So let's get into some of the ingredients. For bread, I'm just gonna use some leftover French bread that I had in the fridge, but I'm also gonna use some plain white bread that I picked up at the Dollar Tree. Should I tell you why I was at the Dollar Tree? I'm only 1 minute into this video and I'm already sidetracking. So I was at the Dollar Tree to get these adorable retro Christmas lights. They're solar, they were $1.25, and I cannot wait to hang them up outside of my house this year. Okay, back to the ingredients. The bread. Yes, you can use very simple white bread, but you can use any bread you really have left over. There was one year we had done a fondue night right around Thanksgiving and we had like 4 different kinds of bread left over. I used all of those breads and this recipe was just as delicious. Okay, you're also gonna need some brown sugar, some vegan butter, a small onion, we're not gonna use all of this, salt and pepper, and tomatoes. Check these babies out. The official recipe calls for a 28-ounce can of tomatoes, and that's the way I've made it plenty of times, and that works out perfectly, and that's what you should do this time of year. However, you can see I am using fresh homegrown tomatoes. So if you had told me back in July that I'd be able to make scalloped tomatoes with fresh from the garden tomatoes around the holiday time, I would have told you you were nuts. However, we here in the DC area had an unusually long growing season, and even though I pulled up my garden a few weeks ago, we are still trying to eat on some of the fresh tomatoes, so it's going to be perfect for this recipe. Again, you should use a 28-ounce can of whole tomatoes. You could also use fresh tomatoes if you want. Both will turn out just fine. Okay, I think I've got everything we need now to get onto this scalloped tomatoes recipe. I diced up my onions nice and fine and I'm sauteing them in a little bit of vegan butter. Now the original recipe says do not let any color get on those onions. And you can see actually that mine are starting to turn just a little brown, so I've let them go a little too far, but it's gonna be fine. You wanna make sure they're translucent. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and add my tomatoes. And obviously, these fresh tomatoes will have a lot more water than the canned tomatoes. So we're gonna cook these for a little while, maybe like 20, 30 minutes. You're gonna wanna cook your canned tomatoes down as well, but not as much. Also, if you're getting the canned tomatoes, make sure you get the whole ones and that you break them apart with your spoon so they can cook a little easier. So these also have the skins on them. My family does not mind the skins at all, so I'm not going to go the extra step, boil them, and take the skins off. This is gonna work just fine for my family. For the bread, you can tear them into chunks or you can slice them into cubes like I'm gonna do because it is a little bit quicker. And then I'm gonna put this in a 275-degree oven for about 20 or 30 minutes, just until the bread is dried out. You can also leave this on a baking sheet overnight, just out in the open air, and it'll dry out. That's the key though. You just want the bread to dry out. You don't want it toasted. The tomatoes are looking perfect. We've got some of that water cooked out, so I'm gonna add another tablespoon of butter, and in my opinion, the most magical of ingredients, brown sugar. I just love this sweet flavor with the tomatoes. So what you do now, and this is where the recipe gets a little versatile. I like the classic salt and pepper for spices, but you can really change this up and make it your own. You can add basil or oregano, even Old Bay, whatever your heart desires. So what we're gonna do now is we're gonna get this sugar and butter mixed into this and cook it for a little bit longer so that we can get this looking a little bit thicker and delicious. Scalloped tomatoes was not part of my family's holiday table growing up. This is one of those dishes that's added to the menu as your family grows. New husbands, new wives, new partners come into the picture, sometimes second husbands, second wives, second partners. It's all good and it all adds to the deliciousness of your holiday dinner. I actually think it's kind of fun to take a look at your holiday side dishes because it really is a reflection of how your family has grown and changed over the years. Our bread chunks are out of the oven, nice and dry, so we're going to add it to our tomato mixture off the heat. The key to perfect scalloped tomatoes, I think, is equal amounts of tomatoes with equal amounts of bread. I think that makes for perfect scalloped tomatoes. So you can see this is sort of like dressing, sort of like stuffing, but I'm telling you, it's like nothing else you've ever eaten. Don't stir it around too much because you don't want that bread to get mushy. You want the bread pieces to stay intact so that when we bake it off, they're nice little crispy parts at the top. I buttered a casserole dish and then transferred my tomato mixture into there, and then I dotted it with more vegan butter. I'm going to cover this with foil and then bake for about 20 minutes. Take off the foil and then bake for another 10 to 15 minutes until everything is nice and crusty and toasty on top. I forgot to show you, I topped it with a few slices of homegrown fresh tomatoes. You do not have to do that. I just thought it would look pretty after it baked. Let's just say the scalloped tomatoes were a huge hit. I was able to grab a little bit so that I could show you what it looks like when it comes out of the oven and do a little taste test. But this is a really good example of how popular this dish is and how delicious everybody thinks it is. This year's dish had a little bit of an extra flair because I was able to say it was made with homegrown tomatoes that came right out of my backyard. And yes, it does still blow my mind that I have homegrown tomatoes on hand during the holiday times. Global warming is not a joke. Now, I know you've probably heard of scalloped potatoes. I'm from the South and we even had something called scalloped oysters, but I have to admit, I do not really know what the term scalloped means. I think the common denominator between all the dishes that I know about is bread, breadcrumbs maybe, butter, and some cream. Now, of course, this dish has none of those because I'm vegan, but if you know what the term scalloped means, I would love to know, and please put it in the comments below. It is sweet, it's kind of rich, it has so much tomato flavor, and the most important thing is it's not mushy. The bread really holds up in this recipe, and that's important. I really hope you make these scalloped tomatoes for your holiday table. Focus on those delicious side dishes and have an incredible holiday season. See you later.